The ancient Maya, a highly advanced civilization, swept aside by destructive forces.
When this starts to happen, things start to go from bad to very, very, very bad.
What led to their downfall has puzzled the world for centuries. But today, investigators are going all out to solve the mystery once and for all. What they find could give us vital lessons in our own battle with major environmental change. Around the world and throughout time, weather has played a part in the fortunes of mankind. Violent events in our planet's atmosphere have transformed history. These are the stories of weather that changed the world. Tikal, Guatemala. One of the most spectacular sights of the ancient Maya. In the 8th century AD, southern Mexico and parts of Central America were dominated by 10 million Maya spread over dozens of cities. These temples and palaces were once a key part of that civilization.
We're in the main plaza of one of the largest and most important cities in the Maya old world. It doesn't matter how many times I come to Tikal, it always amazes me to see how magnificent the old Maya culture was.
The ancient Maya were an advanced agrarian people who enjoyed art and music. With a complex written language and magnificent architecture.
On a typical day, first of all, the city will look wonderful, colorful. Buildings will be full of stucco reliefs, sculptures, paint in many bright colors. The floors will have been polished, painted with different colors. And also you will see a lot of people coming back and forth because this is downtown.
At its height in the 8th century, around 90,000 people would have lived here in Tikal. Maya kings used the temples for elaborate rituals in honor of all-powerful gods, who they believed controlled everything from weather to war. But when explorers arrived here in the 1800s, they found these buildings abandoned. Ghosts of the ancient past, overtaken by the jungle.
The people who carved these civilizations out of the rainforest, where did they go? What happened when apparently, while they were at the peak of their civilization, everything fell apart?
It's a mystery that people have been trying to solve for over 150 years. People like archaeologist Jaime Awe. Today, he's in Belize on a hunt for clues. The ancient Maya thought caves were entrances to the underworld, a point of contact between them and the spirit gods who lived inside. So if there's one place where evidence of ancient Maya life is likely to exist, it's here. After making his way through the network of tunnels, Jaime Awe finds what he came for. There, hidden in the cave's depths, is a grim treasure trove. A horde of human skeletons.
When we look at the way the skeletons are left on the floor, it indicates to us that these are not burials, that these people obviously died from unnatural causes.
Unnatural and, as it turns out, brutal.
In some of the cases, we have found the skulls are located away from the skeletal remains. That would indicate decapitation. In other cases, there has been some trauma by some blunt implement on the skull.
For Jaime Awe, it can only mean one thing.
The picture that started to become very clear to us is that we were looking at actual victims of human sacrifice.
These violent deaths have been dated from the 8th to the 10th century AD. They show that Maya society must have been pushed to its limits during that time. Could these victims be linked to the last days of the civilization itself? To find out, we need to know when that collapse occurred. One way to do that is through these ancient Maya stone monuments. These elaborately carved statues were built by Maya kings as symbols of their power, which makes one example all the more revealing.
This is a really interesting and unusual monument. It only has one hieroglyph carved, but the entire rest of it is blank. It looks like an unfinished piece of work that was left here. We can't imagine why the kings and queens of this site would allow such a thing to happen. It suggests that this was done at a time when the society here was under a lot of pressure, when things might have been going terribly wrong.
The monuments from the site have been dated. The last one was built in 820 AD. It's likely that soon after this, the city was abandoned. What happened here is just one piece of a much bigger puzzle. All across the region, cities fell into decline around this time. Construction in this part of the lowlands had ceased entirely by 910 AD. The dates tie in with the sacrifices in the cave, suggesting that the collapse was a time of violent upheaval. But what was the cause of all this? Warfare? Disease? Invasion? It's unlikely that one single thing was to blame. But today, a theory is growing in strength that a key factor in the collapse was the weather. One man who subscribes to this theory is meteorologist Reynolds Wolfe.
What so many of these agrarian societies relied on more than anything else was rain. Rain that they could count on, moisture that they could basically set the calendar, the clock to.
The ancient Maya seem to have been obsessed by rainfall. This is Chak, the rain god, and he appears all over their artwork. It's a preoccupation shared by their modern Maya descendants, who still carry out ceremonies pleading to the heavens for rain. 1,000 years ago, such a ritual might have looked different, but its purpose would have been the same. The ancient Maya prayed for wet weather because their lives depended on it. Could this obsession with the rain be a clue to their ultimate demise? In the 10th century AD, the survival of the ancient Maya civilization was under threat from an external force. Investigators think that threat might have been the weather. They know the Maya depended heavily on the climate.
Part of the success of agriculture in the Maya lowlands was premised upon the idea of abundant rainfall. So when things were good, everybody was fine. There was lots of food, there was lots of surplus labor to carry rocks, to build these ruins. And so we see these centuries as a time of incredible expansion.
The abundant rainfall that helped the Maya civilization expand was thanks to its location. The Maya lowlands lie in the tropics, where the sun's energy is strongest. Within this zone lies a belt of weather formed by hot air rising up into the atmosphere. As the warm, moist air rises, it cools and generates clouds, which bring plentiful rain to the tropics. The wet weather belt is visible from space as a thick band of cloud. For the ancient Maya, the rain was a gift from heaven.
It was something that they depended on each and every year to have those robust crops. And to their communities, to their society, that rainfall meant everything.
But there's a twist. Although this region might seem like tropical rainforest, it's not. It's what's known as a seasonal desert. During the year, the hottest part of the Earth changes position, and as the belt of warm rising air shifts, so too does the rainfall. That means for part of the year, there's hardly any rain at all. It was a precarious climatic balance that left the Maya vulnerable during the long dry season. Here at Tikal in Guatemala, there's evidence they tried to overcome that problem.
We're looking at one of the main tanks in a chain of reservoirs. They hold water all year long. Now it's covered with vegetation, but you have to think that between us, where we're standing here, and the temple there was a huge reservoir.
It was just one part of a complex water system.
The Mayas were wonderful engineers. They developed all this hydraulic technology that enabled them to have a chain of reservoirs that they can control the movement of water anywhere they want it.
The reservoirs may have kept the city going in the long dry months, but what would happen if the rains failed to fill them in the wet season?
It is truly dancing on a razor's edge. It's a very dangerous existence. If you rely on climate to be picture perfect every single time, you're doomed to fail.
Experts have long suspected that drought was a major factor in the collapse of the ancient Maya. Up till now, it's been virtually impossible to prove. But today, scientists are using new technology to look back in time, to see what the weather was like over 1,000 years ago when the Maya civilization was flourishing. Here in southern Belize, Keith Proofer and a team of scientists from England have come to find vital clues about the area's climate history. This is Yakbalum Cave. To find the clues, they need to travel deep underground. What they're looking for is locked away inside the cave's most spectacular natural feature, stalagmites. They're formed by a buildup of minerals carried by rainwater that drips into the cave over long periods of time. Each one is packed with information that reveals valuable details of the past climate.
The thermometer was only invented about 400 years ago. Prior to the invention of the thermometer, we have no quantitative records of what the weather or climate was actually like. So something has to fill that void. And that something is stalagmites. They're an amazing climate archive because they encode the chemistry of the rainwater over thousands, sometimes tens of thousands and hundreds of thousands of years.
Stalagmites let us examine past climates like never before. Can they provide evidence that the collapse of the ancient Maya civilization was caused by drought? Here at Durham University in England, scientists are trying to solve one of the greatest mysteries of our times: to understand what happened to the ancient Maya civilization. And they're using climate science's latest weapon, stalagmites. Like tree rings, the layers of a stalagmite can be used to find out about past climate conditions. After microscopic samples have been extracted, they're put into a mass spectrometer to analyze their chemical composition. This is the exact process that was used by scientists on a 2,000-year-old stalagmite that was removed from Yakbalum Cave in southern Belize. The results were striking. They show a period of abundant rainfall starting in the 4th century, coinciding with the golden age of the ancient Maya. Then, a change. A downward slope, indicating increasingly dry conditions, from 660 to 1100 AD.
What I find remarkable about this record is that many previous records had alluded to the possibility that drought could be implicated with the demise of the classic Maya civilization. What our record is able to do is to pick out the finer points of exactly what happened.
The results show a clear link between drought and the time of the Maya collapse.
It was exhilarating when we finally saw those graphs, when we finally had the chronology and the precipitation record together, and we looked at it and we said, this is it.
But could drought have really been enough to send the civilization into freefall? A look at our more recent past shows just how devastating drought can be.
Back in the 1930s in the central U.S., the Central Plains, we had an event that was referred to as the Great Dust Bowl.
In the late 1920s, the Central Plains were some of the most fertile in America, thanks to years of above-average rainfall. But in 1931, the rains stopped. For nearly a decade, drought turned the earth to dust, along with the livelihoods of millions of Americans.
They had no answers. They had no way to recover, and it was doomed. It was horrible, and led to one of the greatest migrations of Americans in U.S. history.
2.5 million people joined the Exodus. If this was the effect of drought here, then it's easy to imagine the impact it would have had on the ancient Maya. With population levels already at their limits, successive droughts would have been disastrous, with crops failing and food becoming scarce. But why this drought occurred is a much tougher question to answer. On a global scale, climate is a complex set of interactions between elements that include air pressure, temperature, and wind. Droughts are usually caused by changes in one or more of these. The U.S. Dust Bowl occurred when rain-bearing winds shifted their course to the south of the Central Plains. In a similar way, the droughts in the Maya lowlands are thought to have happened when its wet weather belt was forced south by changes in the global climate. The exact cause of this change is still the subject of fierce debate. But what seems certain is that it drove the ancient Maya to take ever more desperate measures. Experts believe the ancient Maya were struck by devastating drought. But if that's true, then we should see evidence of its impact on the people. Jaime Awe is looking deep inside a cave in Belize, following the same route as the Maya took over 1,000 years ago. They believed that gods lived inside caves, so it was here they brought them offerings of food in the hope of rain.
This is a really interesting discovery in here. It's just a beautifully preserved pot, nicely decorated. You know, these kinds of offerings are being made to the gods because if you feed the gods, then the idea is that the gods will feed you.
The cave is strewn with hundreds of offerings, which date to the period of collapse from the 8th to the 10th century.
I always say, you know, when is it that we pray the most? When we're in deep trouble. When is it that you seek divine intervention? When you can't come up with answers to your problems.
The sheer number of pots from this time bears witness to the growing desperation of Maya society. What's more, they're linked to Jaime's other cave discovery. In a frantic effort to appease the gods, the Maya offered them the greatest gift of all, human life.
Humans were made from corn, according to Maya mythology. And so, when you offer a human to the gods, essentially you're offering food to the gods. And the idea is that the gods will then reciprocate.
But the gods ignored their pleas, and the Maya kings ran out of ideas.
No matter how much bloodletting rituals you did, no matter how much sacrifices you did, something is not working. And I don't really think they were able to come with a right answer for their people.
Many survived the drought by migrating to wetter lands. But the kings who ruled over them for centuries saw their power ebb away. Their palaces and cities were abandoned. The Maya population lost millions during the collapse, shrinking to around a third of its size. And by 1050 AD, the last lights of this once great civilization had been extinguished.
The lesson that we can glean from this is knowing that when changes occur, it is inevitable that they will. We have to be prepared to make those changes also.
Today, we know the weather doesn't change at the whim of capricious gods. But that doesn't mean we've learned how to control it. And if we can learn anything from the fate of the ancient Maya, it's that when it comes to the power of nature, nothing should be taken for granted.